Hey there, boys and girls. Welcome to your Edpuzzle homework tonight, dealing with explaining lesson 11.2. So just like all of our other explaining lessons, we're going to be working our way through the book together so that we really understand what it's asking us to do. So if you have not done so already, please turn to lesson 11.2 in your workbooks. That's page 398 and 399. And like always, as we're working our way through, make sure you're following along and writing things down because it will help you when it's your turn to do it on your own. All right, our learning target for tonight is I can use the standard algorithm to multiply 1 and 2-digit numbers together with and without regrouping. So that whole idea of regrouping is sometimes you're going to have to carry over a new group or new groups that you've made. That standard algorithm part of the standard or part of the target, that means you're going to be stacking up the numbers and multiplying them together. So that's that new strategy we're getting into now. All right. And before we get to that, again, explaining lesson 11.2, if we are trying to solve the problem 3 times 12, there are a lot of different strategies we have talked about this year that can solve this problem. For example, we've talked about making a model, which would show 3 groups of 12 because that's really what this multiplication expression says. We have talked about repeated addition, where you stack that number up so many times and add it together. We've talked about the separation strategy. So instead of trying to do 3 groups of 12 all at once, we broke that 12 into 5, 5, and 2, because that still is 12 when we put those back together. We've talked about the box multiplication, where we've made our area model or we've made an array and separated that 12 into its parts, the 10 and the 2, and then we figure out how many boxes or how many pieces are in each part. And lastly, we've also talked about the idea of partial products, which is very similar to box multiplication, where we break that 12, or we break whatever number we can into expanded form and then multiply the parts from there. So we've been doing all of those strategies this year to get us ready for the strategy we're about to talk about, because we really have to understand what's going on in all of these in order to have a really good understanding of what we're doing next. So on page 398, at the top where we see that step in, it says Robert visits the penguin enclosure. So that'd be like the exhibit at the zoo. The enclosure is rectangular in shape, so we know it's a rectangle. The short side, or that would be the width, is 4 yards long, and we can see that in our model here. The long side, or the length, is 23 yards long. Now, this model that Robert drew in order to figure out the area, this picture that he drew looks very similar to what one of our strategies was on this slide here. That's that idea of box multiplication, to use the area model or an array to help us. So what he did was, instead of trying to do 4 rows of 23, he broke that 23 into expanded form. He broke it into its parts. Because now he's going to see the numbers that come together in this piece of the box and the numbers that would come together in this piece. Well, we know there's going to be 4 groups going up and down all the way across. And we know there's going to be 20 boxes on the bottom and then 3 boxes on the bottom in this part of our model. So we know it's going to be 4 times 20 in this piece where my blue arrows come together. And 4 times 20 would be, yeah, very good. 4 times 20 would be 80. And then we know there's also going to still be 4 groups or 4 boxes up and down here, 3 on the bottom. So 4 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 4 would be, would be 12. And then we have to combine those parts together in order to figure out the final answer. Now, keeping this strategy in mind, we're going to also do the standard multiplication algorithm to calculate the answer. So notice we're still doing the same problem. We're still trying to do 23 times 4, which is exactly what Robert was trying to do up here to figure out the area. Because remember, area is length times width. So now I've color-coded this to kind of make it easier for you. If we look up here in Robert's picture, we see that the red arrows come together in this piece. And the multiplication problem we're doing there is 4 times 3. If we look down here in step 1, because the first part of this question says what numbers are multiplied in each step, we're multiplying 4 times 3 right here. Notice that's why it's got that red circle around it, just like we had up here with our red arrows. We're still doing the same problem, except we're not drawing it in a box to do it. We're still doing 4 times 3, and we're still going to get 12. Just like we do with addition, though, we're going to put our 2 ones down and we're going to carry over that new group of 10 that we made. And we're going to save that group of 10 for step 2. Because now when we go to step 2, again, I used a blue circle this time, because again, just like we had up here, we're still doing the same problems. Up here in our box, we did 4 times 20. When I look down here, I'm doing 4 times 2, but that 2 is in the tens place, so I'm really doing 4 times 20 right here as well. So 4 times 20 would be 80, just like we got here. However, we can't forget about that extra group that I carried over. So I have to add that extra group in after I do my 4 groups of 20, or 4 times 20. So really this would be 80, or 8 in the tens place, but I have to add that extra group of 10 I made in step 1. So really it's going to be 90. Just like up here was 92 was our final answer. And think about that. If we would have stacked these numbers up, we would have gotten 92, just like we did down here. So we need to keep that understanding in mind of other strategies as we're working through and doing the standard algorithm. So if you've not done so already, please focus your attention to page 398 and 399. And really, we're just going to focus on page 399 today, because your responsibility is to do all of step up, number 2. You do not need to worry about the estimating part. They want you to solve the standard multiplication algorithm for each answer. So just like we did in our slides, I'm going to start in the ones place first. So I'm going to do 3 times 2 first. That would get me 6. So I put down my 6 ones. There's nothing to carry over to the tens place. So now since I've done this part of the equation or the problem, now I've got to do the other part. So now I'm going to do 3 times 30, or 3 times 3, which would be 9. And there's nothing left over to carry over. So my final answer would be 96. Now I want to focus down here for E, though. Again, remember, you don't have to do the estimating. I'm going to start in the ones place. So I'm going to do 7 times 3, or 3 times 7. That answer is going to be 21. So that's a 2-digit answer. So I'm going to, just like I do when I add, I'm going to put down my ones. That would be 1. I'm going to carry over those 2 new groups of 10 I got when I got 21. See how I carry those 2 new groups over, just like I do when I add. Now I'm going to do the second part of the problem, 3 times 2, or 3 times 20, which would be 60, or 6 in the tens place. And then I have to add in those 2 extra groups. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus the extra 2 would be 8. So my answer here would be 81. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to work on the rest of step up number 2. I want you to solve the rest of those problems now. Do your best on those. We'll go over those later on. Have a good night. Make smart choices.